What is going on, everybody? Travis Fowler, Hark Rider, is back again this week with another edition of Tights and Turnbuckles, formerly known as the Four Corner Podcast. And you know what that means. It's time to do one of my favorite things in life. Let's talk pro wrestling. This week, wrestling didn't have like a whole lot of drama, which, when you talk about the wrestling business, it's actually kind of surprising that there wasn't a whole lot of drama. But that is for the good. Anything that actually went on was pretty much all positive. I mean, the TNA Slammiversary show is taking place or is just wrapping up as we speak and are recording this podcast. It's right around 10 o'clock on Saturday night here on Central Time Zone in America. So I believe Slammiversary is probably just now going off the air. So I'm just going to do a preemptive one of, oh my God, I can't believe Joe Hendry's now the new TNA heavyweight champion. And just in case that's not the situation that just took place, oh my Lord, can you believe that Moose retained the title in an amazing matchup? Wow, unbelievable. There, now I covered both bases when it comes towards the main event of either a retain or who I would have want to win the TNA World Title tonight in that six-pack elimination challenge. So there's that, and it was a sold-out show for TNA as well. It's the first big gate that they've done, selling out a 4,000-seat arena in over a decade. We talked about that just briefly last week on the show, and I'm just bringing it up again because it's such a wonderful thing that TNA, after rebranding at the beginning of the year, all the drama with Scott D'Amore leaving the company and a few other big figureheads leaving, it's amazing that since this crossover with NXT has taken place, there's been a little bit of a renewed sense of interest with TNA. There's been talks that a streaming service by the name of Tubi, if you haven't checked them out, you should, because Tubi is absolutely amazing and it's all free, is looking to actually add a wrestling show to their product. And at one point, they had Lucha Underground to stream on their platform. It is no longer available to do so, but they have been looking to add wrestling into their streaming content, and more people have mentioned about MLW potentially getting that. TNA would benefit, I believe, greatly from getting on Tubi for that exposure. So there's a lot of good things going on in wrestling, and again, specifically for TNA, a lot of positive has taken place over the last couple of months with them, and I'm so happy for that brand because as somebody who started watching TNA in 2004, I drifted away, as I've mentioned in other videos, about the end of the Hogan Bischoff era. I just began to lose interest in TNA, and over the last 3 years, basically ever since COVID, I've tried to be a little bit more aware of TNA, and overall, it's hard to say that they aren't one of the best alternative wrestling programs out there. And yeah, I do throw AEW in there, but that's not a bash or a dig at AEW. As a matter of fact, I'll have some high praise for them coming up. But TNA has been on an upswing. I hope that they can continue this momentum going forward. The Rascals reunion that took place on NXT this past week really did my heart well. The match was amazing. They had a match tonight against No Quarter Catch Crew, and I don't know how that has gone down because, quite frankly, I don't like spoilers, which is why I did my little opening spiel on the TNA World Title match, because I don't know who won, and I personally still want to watch it. I haven't even watched this week's episode of Impact yet, so I need to do that, and then I need to follow up with Slammiversary. So you ain't going to get any spoilers from me, nor will you get spoilers from me at any point or time on my show, because I personally love surprises when it comes to professional wrestling. So spoilers ruin that. That was one of the best things about being a fan, is being surprised from time to time. So I'm never going to ruin those. I'm never going to give away results. It's just not my thing. But I said I had high praise for AEW coming up. That's what we're going to talk about right now. First, good news for AEW fans is that at least over in France, they had started putting AEW content on the Max streaming platform, which has led some people to believe that there has been a new deal struck with WBD and AEW will remain with the TNT and TBS networks. And if that's the case, great. I'm so happy for them. I know that their exclusivity window was actually closing pretty quickly. But if they're starting to put that on the Max streaming service, while it may not be available currently in the US, the fact that a version of Max is starting to get that shows that there is, I guess, either something that's in the works, maybe a deal has been finalized. I'm assuming that we're getting close to finding out if AEW has indeed reached a new deal with WBD. There had been reports, as we had heard about 2 months ago, that they had actually come real close to striking a deal and that WBD was very much interested in keeping AEW on their platform, but they also were very much focused about trying to keep the NBA on their platform. And there was a report that came out earlier this week stating that WBD is trying extremely hard, even as going as far as matching Amazon's offer for the NBA licensing property. So there's still some questions as to what exactly WBD is going to do next when it comes to the NBA, how that could potentially affect AEW and a new deal for them. A lot of questions there, but again, good news of them adding it to the Max service in France. Hopefully we see that here stateside sooner rather than later. But the main praise that I wanted to give AEW is, again, the past week episode of Dynamite. 250 episodes of AEW Dynamite. I have seen somebody post this once before, and I'll actually reiterate it here. I think we are now just 33 episodes shy of AEW tying, I believe. It could be either tying or beating WCW Monday Nitro when it comes to on air. Not that that really means anything to anybody, including myself, other than that it just shows that AEW is here to stay. I think most people figured that was going to be the case anyway because it's bankrolled by Tony Khan himself. So with that man, he pretty much has an unlimited bank account to do whatever he wants and fund this for as long as he wants. So I don't think that's really any surprise that we've made it this far with Dynamite. I think we're now starting to get some good momentum back with AEW. I know they've been in a little bit of a slump for a while. I know at least I felt it. It wasn't just my opinion, but the opinions of many others that AEW was just hitting a downward slope for a while. But as we talked about last week, it seems like they're starting to really pay more attention to the storytelling aspect of wrestling, because as we stated last week, and as I'm a big believer of it, it is the stories that keep viewers coming back. Stories can help build to classic matches, and then the actual in-ring match itself can be something that is added as part of that story. And I think we can safely say that we saw a first chapter written of a story through the MJF Will Ospreay match that opened Dynamite 250 this past Wednesday. Very much unbelievable. It is a great match. I've rewatched it already, and it really is great. It just showcases Will Ospreay's unbelievable athleticism, that his timing is just impeccable. And despite what some people would say, I do see it. I was watching for it. Ospreay can sell very well. I know that may not mean a whole lot to the average Joe casual fan, but if you're a hardcore wrestling fan or even somebody that is involved in the industry, then you know what I mean. That Will Ospreay has always been known as more of a flippy guy, a guy who doesn't really take to the art form of selling, that is. But I disagree. After what I saw him do in this match with MJF, I think people need to really reevaluate their thought process about Will Ospreay. His whole shoulder situation in the match was very well done. The fact that his knees, not just one, but both knees were worked over by MJF, and even at one point he was selling one of them very well, going the hour Broadway nearly by just 2 seconds shy of a draw. Unbelievable storytelling. And with MJF doing great character work as always, and along with his great in-ring work, it has made me hope we get the rematch at Wembley Stadium. I said that on our TikTok channel earlier this week. I still hold true to that statement. I want to see the rematch at Wembley. After what we saw on Wednesday, I believe it is a match worthy of Wembley Stadium. And if Daniel Garcia is factored into any of those plans, cool, keep him in there. Put him as like a special referee, or maybe even a surprise appearance that distracts MJF, something along those lines. But the match was unbelievably awesome. All that said, I legitimately started to wonder, did we see the best Dynamite match ever this past Wednesday with Ospreay and MJF? Some people have said it is. A lot of people, including Dave Meltzer, gave it an unbelievably ridiculous 5.75 rating. I want to talk about what is the best match in Dynamite history. Is it MJF and Ospreay? After rewatching it, there was very little that I could critique about it, but I did see some things that did concern me. The other match that I have heard people compare it to is it as good as Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega? I went back and rewatched that one as well because I wanted to see, is there a difference between the two? Did I feel something different between the two matches? And I gotta say, the Danielson-Omega match is still just as good as it was the first time you watch it. Their moves are amazing. The focus of the match is very clear, where you've got Danielson's neck and back being worked on by Omega, and whether or not it's going to wear down Danielson because of his neck issues. If I recall correctly, that match was Danielson's first AEW match. I know that was the first Grand Slam in Arthur Ashe, but now that does leave the question. In my opinion, there are only two matches that could be qualified as being the best match that AEW Dynamite, the show itself, has ever had. What is it? Is it MJF versus Will Ospreay? Or is it Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega? After rewatching both and watching both very carefully with a critic's eye, and the knowledge that I do have about the in-ring work of professional wrestling, by just, if anything, that much, I have to say Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega is a better match than MJF and Ospreay. And it simply comes down to details. I wasn't a big fan of the referee stuff that went on with Ospreay and MJF because it was just, I think at a certain point, I get that you want to, quote, let them go at it and not screw the fans out of a good finish. But they used tables. They were outside in the audience forever and a day. And to me, that excuse of, well, it's referee's discretion, he's not wanting to end the match like that and disappoint the fans, well, I'm sorry. In that case, then, you need to have your competitors understand the rules of the match and construct the match around the rules, because then it makes it that much more effective. And that's where I think the difference lies between Danielson Omega and MJF and Ospreay. And that is why I have just given, again, that much more to Omega and Danielson as being the best AEW Dynamite match ever. And I know that some may disagree with that, especially since Danielson and Omega went to a 30-minute time limit draw, while this one went nearly an hour and had an actual finish to it, with the heel MJF getting the dirty win and the international title at that. But yeah, just because of details like the referee I brought up and a few others, I am going to give the edge to Omega and Danielson. But never take away from the fact that both matches are phenomenal and all four are great in-ring workers, and they all four displayed their talents in both matches. So thank you to all four for giving us great matches on free TV nonetheless. Now, AEW we're going to stick with for a moment, because there is a rumor that Tony Khan had been looking at running a stadium show in the Dallas area, which there's only one stadium in that area. And my understanding is he's come out over the last couple days and said that that's not the case. At least nothing has been planned thus far. But he did leave the door open, saying that it is possible that we could do something like that next year in 2025, but only time will tell if that'll actually be the case. I don't know if I would like the idea of AEW running a stadium show, especially at Dallas, which would be held at AT&T Stadium. I just don't think that they would get the number out of it that they would be looking for. Attendance-wise, I should say. And that's simply because we've seen AEW struggle with attendance. Now, when it comes to their big shows, like their pay-per-views, they've been sellout crowd. I saw one person say that you could easily do Double or Nothing there, and since there's a whole gambling casino theme with the Double or Nothing name, and it's also been held in Vegas for, since its inception back in 2019, you could easily still stick with the casino theme, only called it Double or Nothing Texas Hold'em. It actually sounds kind of fun. So time will tell if we get this stadium show in 2025. Right now, that doesn't look to be the case, but hey, who knows what could happen? Maybe AEW swings momentum back in their favor to where a stadium show will take place. I wish them all the best, and man, if they do run a stadium show, I think I might have to actually try my best to attend that, because it would be quite the spectacle to see. Now, I think we're going to have to talk a little bit of a downer news here. We're going to talk about the Ring of Honor extension of AEW. I've said it numerous times over the last couple of years. Since Ring of Honor was purchased, I really do think that the brand would have been better off either being sold to WWE at this point, at least for the video library, or honestly, I wish Tony Khan wouldn't have bought the company, because Kerry Silkin, who did an interview, actually had some pretty decisive words for his feelings about Ring of Honor and how it's been treated since Tony Khan purchased it. Mind you, this is the same man who stated when Tony Khan purchased the company, it was in good hands, Ring of Honor being in good hands of Tony Khan. Fast forward now to current times, Kerry Silkin has flat out said no one cares about Ring of Honor. He's not wrong. It's not had a big focal point to it at all. And it's not been treated well, was another statement that he said. No matter how much money Tony Khan has thrown into his product, it doesn't negate the fact that Ring of Honor is irrelevant right now. I've expressed numerous times, as many others, what can you do to help Ring of Honor become relevant? Well, for one, split the rosters. You've got to have a distinctive roster, and they don't do that. They share talent between the Ring of Honor and AEW shows, which I understand. Ring of Honor is under AEW's umbrella, but if you're actually wanting to create a successful brand, all you need to do, and I do mean this with the utmost respect, look at what WWE did with NXT. They separated it to a certain extent. Yes, it was under their umbrella. Yes, it's part of their universe. Yes, it is a farming facility essentially for people to get trained and eventually move up to the main roster. Ring of Honor, you don't have to necessarily treat the exact same way as NXT. You should treat it like Raw or SmackDown. You need the two distinct rosters so that you have two distinct products and you can actually make people care about each product, and each star has a potential to succeed in each company. But as we've seen, they don't do that. And I think that has been to Ring of Honor's detriment. I can't even tell you the last time I watched a full Ring of Honor show. I couldn't even tell you the last time I was excited for a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. They have Death Before Dishonor that is supposed to take place next weekend. And I have zero interest to watch it, even with a main event of Mark Briscoe versus Roderick Strong for the ROH title. Doesn't mean anything to me. Don't care. I really would hope that Tony Khan will eventually turn his thoughts about Ring of Honor around to the point where they do make it a distinctive show with its own roster and its own personality. But right now, as it stands, I doubt that that ever happens. But you know what? I don't want to necessarily keep talking negative. I want to bring up something positive that does have a little bit of a hint of negative in there. And it's because of what Moose, at the moment, because again, no spoilers, I don't know what's going on at Slammiversary this evening, but the reigning TNA champion did an interview this past week with Alistair McGeorge of Metro. And he was asked about the NXT TNA crossover. He said, quote, "I think this is the best relationship that TNA has ever had. Quote, but way better than the one we had with AEW, better than what was done with AAA and any other company. I think this relationship with the WWE, both companies respect each other and are doing great by each other. And there's there's not one company that is being selfish. Both companies are doing great. So I think this is how a relationship is meant to be in pro wrestling. And TNA and WWE is doing the best job of it." That is huge praise for WWE from a not just TNA wrestler, but the TNA champion. To say that this has been the best partnership with them has honestly made me feel like this thing is far from over. We've heard reports that there's still plenty of crossovers that are supposed to take place, that there was a lot of surprises, at least from what Dirt Sheets were saying, planned for tonight's Slammiversary with the NXT brand. So I really do hope we still get more of this crossover. Honestly, the crossover for both sides, AEW and WWE, have been great. This is part of what we want in wrestling. We talked about it last week. The more crossovers take place, the more we see bigger cards, super cards with dream matches. You can build stories to these dream matches if you want to, or if you want to do something like a Wrestle Dynasty is doing in Japan, where you could potentially put together a dream match just based off of the marquee names. That's New Japan style. That's kind of AEW style as well. So all of these crossovers are just better for the business. Everybody's benefiting from it, and there's so much wrestling to consume. WWE had some news itself that came out that got people very excited, but they wanted to clarify something that was put out in the media but not actually defined. Earlier this week, there was a rumor that came out saying that WWE was no longer going to hinder people from using their names once they are either released or contracts expire. There had been a little bit of light shed on this, though, so it's not really a rumor killer completely, but it's mainly the established talents that have names that are either already made that have come into the WWE. As an example, Ethan Page, who just recently had his name trademarked by WWE. Once his contract with the WWE expires, or if he's released for any reason and the non-compete clause, which I don't think they can do any longer, but I don't know all the details on that. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. Either way, once he is no longer with the company at all, then his name will revert back to his ownership. So basically, they are just giving people their names back that they used prior to WWE. The people that have come in through WWE, or if they've got a name that's been established through the WWE banner, for instance, like if Fergal Prince Devitt, which has signed a 5-year extension, if he hadn't done that and he was a free agent, then he would be free to use his name Fergal Devitt again, or Prince Devitt, which under the McMahon regime, there was a lot of chaos erupting over the fact that they were trying to trademark people's actual names and then not give it back. So whereas he's built a whole brand off of Finn Balor, that would stay with WWE. That is the big news, if you will, that WWE came up with. So again, it's not the WWE names that have been created, as in like the Finn Balor name, which is not his actual name. Those will stay intact. It is just their individual either birthright names or names that they have created prior to their WWE run. Now, before I go, I said I had a bit of a gripe when it comes to the Dave Meltzer star ratings. The 5.75 rating that was given to the Will Ospreay MJF match this past week on Dynamite. First and foremost, I want to put out there that his rating system is complete BS. There's nothing that is substantial about his rating system. Okay, it's all subjective. It's all his own opinion. It is not something that he has actually created a criteria for that says, oh, well, this was done, this was done, this was done. This is what earns them their 3 stars or 4 stars or 5 stars, whatever star he wants to give. He's done like 6.25, I think, at one point. But you have to understand the source. The guy is nothing more than a historian, as Eric Bischoff has put him. He's not a journalist. He has created fake news and has put it out there as real, which has gotten him in trouble more times than I'm sure he cares to admit to, but that's the case. So to anybody that puts stock behind his star rating system, let me be another person to tell you, you need to stop, because it's complete subjective opinions of one human being. If anything, you could almost compare it to that of Vince McMahon's opinion when it comes to anything at WWE when he was in charge. If it didn't satisfy him, then it wasn't good. That's what Dave Meltzer does. And personally, I've even thought about creating my own star system, only the difference is I would have a criteria to match with it. So that might be something we start doing here at Tights and Turnbuckles. If you like that idea, let me know in those comments below. But I don't want to leave on a down note, so instead, let's revert back to the MJF, Ospreay, Danielson, Omega feud. Between those two matches, which one is your favorite? Sound off in those comments down below. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, as we have officially broke 100 subscribers. Thank you all very much that have subscribed. If you're new, welcome. And if you've been with us from day one, I can't express my gratitude enough to you. Make sure you're also following us on all of our social media pages. That'd be Facebook, Instagram, X, and on TikTok as well. We are doing great numbers over on TikTok right now, and we upload a new video nearly daily. Hopefully you're following us on all those pages and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I will be back again next week to talk more pro wrestling, because I love to do so. But until that time, have a great week, and y'all continue to love pro wrestling.